Our main character, Tamako, was born into a wealthy and prestigious family. However, he grew up without receiving any love from his relatives. One day, Tamako had a serious accident. He lost his mother in that accident. And at the same time, Tamako also lost his right hand. However, what hurt him even more was being abandoned by his own father. With the reason that a prestigious family cannot keep a cripple. His father kicked him out of the house. Tamako was sent to live alone in a mansion on a mountain. Day after day, he sank into despair and always thought, it would be better if I just died. Tonight, a heavy snowstorm came. Tamako decided to choose this night to end his life. He wanted to put an end to his lonely and meaningless existence. But at that very moment, amidst the howling wind and thick darkness, suddenly, Tamako heard a knock at the door. It was strange. In the freezing winter night, a girl appeared at his doorstep. The girl introduced herself as Yuzuki, and she said that from now on, she would be his wife. It turned out that before completely giving up on Tamako, his father had purchased a bride for him, as a sort of final act of mercy. But to Tamako at that time, it no longer meant anything. Even so, Tamako gave Yuzuki his coat to help her fight the cold. Then, he led her into an empty room to rest. Yuzuki sat quietly for a while. Then, she gently smiled, the first smile that he had seen after those lonely days. That night, Tamako stayed up all night again. The next morning, just as he stepped out of his room, he was surprised to see the young girl happily cleaning the house. Yuzuki smiled brightly, full of energy. She noticed the dark circles under Tamako's eyes, and immediately moved closer to ask if he was okay. That sudden concern startled him, and he walked away. Ever since she arrived, Yuzuki had gradually dispelled the gloomy atmosphere in the house. She did the housework, went to town for groceries, and even carefully mended Tamako's underwear. A few seconds later, he realized that fact, and instantly blushed from embarrassment. With only one working arm, bathing had become extremely difficult for Tamako. Unexpectedly, Yuzuki suddenly barged in and bathed him herself. Though she acted so carefree and innocent, the truth was, she had been sold off to pay a debt. Surely, she must be carrying a sorrow she couldn't express. What troubled Yuzuki the most wasn't being sold, but rather her insecurity about her hair. Yuzuki only wished she had smooth, straight hair like everyone else. Hearing that, Tamako couldn't help but laugh. That was the first time Yuzuki saw him smile, which made her happy. But right after that, Tamako also kicked her out of the bathroom. Looking back on the past, going to school every day was a joy for Yuzuki. She would eat snacks, chat, and laugh with her 4 close friends. When they found out she had to quit school to marry and pay off a debt, everyone was deeply worried. All they could do was silently pray that Yuzuki would meet a kind person and live a happy life. Tonight is New Year's Eve, but for Tamako, it doesn't mean anything. He couldn't sleep again and went outside to sit alone. Tamako thought about his father and siblings, the ones who had always treated him poorly ever since he became disabled. Just then, Yuzuki gently approached. She started a small fire to keep warm, and said that she wanted to spend the night with him. At that moment, Tamako realized clearly, Yuzuki also felt lonely and miserable, living on a cold mountain with a cripple like him. Every night, he would always think, if I were to die, probably no one would come to my funeral. That thought kept him from sleeping. But Yuzuki softly began to sing a song, then handed him a cup of warm milk. Now, she came over and gently stroked his head, comforting him like a family member would. In truth, when Yuzuki first heard she was going to be sold, she was very scared too. But from the very first moment she met Tamako, and so, she felt the gentleness and kindness from him. That made Yuzuki feel like she was truly lucky. She was sure that he would cherish her. So she also wanted to treat Tamako well, like the husband she had chosen. Then, Yuzuki suggested, on New Year's night, let's sleep together. At that moment, Tamako was completely confused, because it was his first time. Tamako decided to pull out a guidebook and read through it. But unexpectedly, what Yuzuki meant was simply sleeping together. Nothing more. Seeing Tamako looking a bit disappointed, Yuzuki said, I'm still just a girl. I want to save my first time for after we're married. Tamako asked. Do you plan to do that with someone you don't love? Yuzuki smiled. That's not it. I want to be with you. I believe that, someday, I will truly fall in love with you. She tugged on Tamahiko's sleeve and softly said, "How can anyone sleep like this?" Surprisingly, that night turned out to be the first time Tamahiko could sleep so peacefully. The next morning, on a beautiful early day, Tamahiko accidentally walked into the bathroom. Not knowing that Yuzuki was inside, she hurriedly apologized for letting him see such a disturbing sight. Yuzuki jokingly said that he probably wanted to be disturbed like that again. Fortunately, the steam in the room had already blurred everything, so he didn't actually see anything too indecent. During breakfast, Yuzuki not only deboned the fish for him, but she also leaned in close to him in a very affectionate way. She even reached out to pick a grain of rice stuck to Tamahiko's face. Those small gestures of hers stirred Tamahiko's heart, but he kept telling himself that he was a pessimist, so he couldn't be swayed so easily. After that, Tamahiko received a letter from his father. In the letter, his father informed him that Tamahiko's older siblings had just received marriage proposals. However, to avoid bringing shame to the family, his father didn't want the in-laws to know that there was a disabled son in the household. Therefore, he decided to treat Tamahiko as if he were dead. He even planned to hold a fake funeral. Upon reading this, Tamahiko nearly lost all will to live. He stopped eating, and Tamahiko just lay in his room, ignoring Yuzuki, who kept calling out to him in worry. After more than a day of starvation, Tamahiko developed a high fever. He thought about his father and the 4 siblings who had abandoned him, and that made him even more determined to die. Tamahiko believed that if he died, Yuzuki would also be freed from her current life. But Yuzuki wouldn't allow that to happen. She held his face in her hands, then scolded him harshly, while also urging him not to torture himself over the past. Then Yuzuki hugged Tamahiko, even though he was throwing up on her favorite outfit. The next morning when he woke up, Tamahiko realized Yuzuki's favorite kimono had been ruined because of him. So he decided to take her to Tokyo as an apology. When they arrived, Yuzuki was fascinated by the busy, modern city. At the fabric shop, she couldn't take her eyes off the beautiful cloths. In the end, she picked out 2 she really liked, but she didn't know which one to choose. Tamahiko decided to buy both, and he even picked the most expensive ones, which made Yuzuki so flustered that she hesitated to accept them. He apologized for ruining her special outfit, but to Yuzuki, the gift he gave today was even more precious, because it was the very first present from the man she loved. She considered it an irreplaceable keepsake. After that, the 2 of them went into an ice cream shop. Yuzuki casually fed Tamahiko a spoonful, causing everyone around them to stare endlessly. When Tamahiko saw a family happily spending time together, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart, because he had never experienced a family like that. At the end of the trip, on the train ride back, Yuzuki was so tired that she fell asleep on his shoulder. When the train shook, Tamahiko even pulled her closer to him. In her heart, she quietly promised to always stay by his side, thinking that she would never let Tamahiko be lonely again. From then on, whenever she finished her chores, Yuzuki would bring out fabric to sew. After a month, she had finished making an outfit. Even though the shoulder area looked a bit childish, it was still very cute. Just then, a girl appeared. It was Tamako, Tamahiko's younger sister. With a mischievous smile, she announced that she'd be staying here for a while to mess with her brother. Upon meeting Yuzuki, Tamako showed a look of pity, thinking it was sad that someone as young as Yuzuki had to get married. But in fact, Yuzuki was already 14 and 2 years older than Tamako. Even so, Yuzuki quickly became the target of bullying from her sister-in-law. Tamako had a sharp personality, and she had always been quick with harsh words since she was little. Tamako always acted in her own way, and no one could ever guess what she was thinking. Yuzuki, however, didn't take it to heart. She believed that the more people there were, the happier the home would be. Yuzuki even organized a welcome party for her sister-in-law, although both Tamako and Tamahiko were relentlessly teased. The next day, Yuzuki invited Tamahiko for a walk. He intended to refuse, but couldn't bear to make her sad. Even though Tamahiko had lived here for a while, this was the first time he truly appreciated the local nature. The 2 of them arrived at a massive tree with an Inari deity statue inside. And suddenly, a fairy tale scene unfolded. Without Yuzuki, Perhaps he would have never seen this. She even scooped spring water for him to drink. Since Tamahiko's hands were not free, so Yuzuki used her cupped hand to pour him some water. And water offered by a wife might be the most delicious in the world. On the way back, Yuzuki held his hand, saying that she wanted to come here together again in the spring. When they stood atop a mountain overlooking the town, at that moment, Tamako noticed that Yuzuki was cooking. Curious about the enticing aroma of something, it turned out that Yuzuki was making milk caramel. Tamako was surprised that a woman who had been forced into marriage like Yuzuki would be so diligent. Because when Yuzuki tried her best to serve Tamahiko, it made her very happy. She even prepared a jar of candy just for Tamahiko to enjoy while reading. Yuzuki even sampled one candy herself, but she accidentally put her entire finger into Tamahiko's mouth. That intimate moment made Tamako furious. So she threw the candy to the ground and stormed off. That night, there was heavy rain. Tamako recalled her past. Every time she tried to speak with her father, he rejected her, because he only cared about his work, and never thought about his children's lives. At school, she was also ostracized by her classmates, because of her arrogant attitude. That was what shaped her into who she was today. Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder frightened Tamako. As she had a phobia of thunderstorms, Yuzuki came to check and found her sister-in-law standing frozen in place. Tamako claimed she needed to use the bathroom, but she pretended not to know the way, because she wanted Yuzuki to guide her there. Then another loud thunderclap struck, sending Tamako into a panic. And right then, she lost control and wet herself. Yuzuki quickly pulled her into the bathroom, while she herself had to sit outside in the rain to boil water for Tamako's bath. Yuzuki understood that Tamako was afraid of being alone, so she decided to sleep with Tamako that night, and the two of them ended up sharing their hearts with each other. Tamako also shared the reason she moved here. She said she had once thought about dropping out of school, but when she was constantly compared to Tamahiko, she wanted to see for herself what kind of person her brother really was. So Tamako decided to move in. At that moment, Yuzuki also wished, if I had a little sister like Tamako, she would never let her sister feel lonely like that. Tamako thought it was just a lie, because no one would want to be around someone big and foul-mouthed like her. But Yuzuki didn't think that way. Suddenly, Yuzuki's warm hug and gentle singing voice helped ease Tamako's sorrow. The next morning, Tamahiko was completely surprised when he saw the two girls getting along so well. He had never seen his younger sister so happy. On a scorching hot summer day, Tamahiko sat quietly, reminiscing about the past. He remembered the days when he was still a member of the Shima family. A name that was both prestigious and burdensome. Because he carried the Shima name, Tamahiko was often shunned by the other kids. Even so, Tamahiko never hated going to school. But now, all of that was in the past. While Tamahiko was lost in his memories, Tamako and Yuzuki were happily spending time together. Tamako giggled, because her new hairstyle looked just like a famous singer's. In contrast, Yuzuki had always been insecure about her frizzy, messy hair. No one would have expected it. But Tamako, the one known for harsh words, actually complimented Yuzuki, saying her fluffy hair was cute. Just catching Tamahiko glancing at her for a second, Tamako blushed and immediately kicked her brother out of the room. After that, it was Yuzuki's turn to start her daily routine. She worked diligently, without a single word of complaint. Seeing Tamahiko sweating heavily while reading due to the heat, Yuzuki brought a fan over for him. At that moment, Tamahiko suddenly felt a strange emotion stir inside. However, he quickly tried to calm himself down. It's not like I have feelings for her or anything. Just as Yuzuki stood up to make tea, she suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed onto Tamahiko. He quickly said, "If you don't mind, you can lean on me for a bit." So the little girl sat beside him for a while longer, before Yuzuki finally stood up and went inside. But just as she stepped into the house, Yuzuki suddenly collapsed to the ground. Tamahiko panicked. He didn't know what to do. Tamako rushed over to check and discovered her sister-in-law had a high fever. Tamako didn't allow Tamahiko to take Yuzuki to rest, because she thought her brother, having only one hand, might accidentally hurt Yuzuki even more. While the two were trying to loosen Yuzuki's kimono to make her more comfortable, Tamahiko just stood there, staring blankly, which made Tamako furious. Even with a high fever, Yuzuki still didn't forget about preparing lunch. Too worried, Tamako decided to go down to the village to call a doctor. Meanwhile, the only thing Tamahiko could do was fan Yuzuki to keep her cool. Thinking back, Tamako was right. With his poor communication skills, if he went to find a doctor, it would have only wasted time. However, when Tamahiko even spilled water while trying to scoop it, she returned to find him wiping the whole house by himself. That annoyed Tamako, and she kicked him out of the house. After the doctor had finished examining Yuzuki, Tamahiko tried to thank him and offer payment, but due to his clumsy way of speaking, the doctor misunderstood and thought he was an arrogant Shima family member. Not only did Tamahiko look physically larger than normal, but the Shima family also carried a cold, intimidating reputation. The doctor concluded that Yuzuki fell ill from overwork. He assumed she was just an unfortunate maid forced to toil away. Apparently, the rumors about the Shima family buying a servant had spread to the village. People even whispered that the girl had to live in isolation, with a man on the mountain, which was considered extremely unusual. The doctor said, "There are things money can't buy, like a healthy arm." For example, at that moment, Tamako immediately stepped up to defend her brother. She knew very well that Tamahiko had never seen Yuzuki as a mere servant. Even so, he stayed silent and let people insult him. He believed that all the blame stemmed from himself, and that he was the reason Yuzuki had worked herself to exhaustion. Tamako also felt guilty, because when she came here, she only added to their burden. But she knew, if she hadn't been here today to help, Tamahiko would have panicked and not known what to do. At this rate, if he didn't change, one day, Yuzuki might truly collapse for good. As soon as she regained consciousness, Yuzuki hurriedly asked about Tamahiko's meals and sleep. Tamako wondered, why does she care so much about my useless brother? Someday, she could easily marry a far better man. Yuzuki explained that, a long time ago, she had a friend who was abused by his own mother. Every day, he was told things like, "You should just die." Just like how Tamahiko feels now. Back then, she asked her own mother, "How can I save my friend from such cruel words?" Her mother once told her, "Unlocking a heart that's been tightly shut is incredibly difficult. But if you're truly willing to go through both happy and sad times together, then one day, happiness will surely return." Wounded souls always need a place to lean on and be comforted. After all, Tamahiko would be her husband in the future. Just hearing the word, husband, made Yuzuki blush with embarrassment. Standing nearby, Tamako silently thought to herself, "I think I'm starting to become like her." Meanwhile, Tamahiko still couldn't stop blaming himself. So he decided to check on Yuzuki, but was completely shocked to see her clutching her chest, blood soaking through. It turned out it was just a cut on her hand. She had tried to loosen her chest bindings to help her breathe. When she softly pleaded, "Please, help me," Tamahiko panicked. Tamako was in the bath and couldn't come to help. Seeing Yuzuki struggle for air, her bindings wrapped too tightly. He didn't hesitate anymore. Tamahiko grabbed the scissors and carefully cut the bandages. But he never expected. What he saw next was something he never imagined. All this time, he had thought of Yuzuki as a girl with a flat chest. But sometimes, appearances can be deceiving. Soon after, she regained consciousness. He thought it was Tamako. So he panicked a little. So she had to confess that Yuzuki always had to wrap herself tightly in bandages when going to school because she was self-conscious about her unbalanced figure. Tamahiko apologized for being a terrible guy, making her fall ill and being unable to take proper care of her. Just when he was about to help, he accidentally exposed her secret. He thought maybe he should ask his father to let her leave this place, because Tamahiko didn't want her to keep living in misery. But Yuzuki hugged him and said, "I don't want to go back. I want to stay with you." After a night of rest, the next morning, Yuzuki had recovered. No matter what Tamahiko said, she just wanted to continue her work. Being called by her every morning made Tamahiko's heart flutter again. He silently vowed, "I must become a man who can bring her happiness." During dinner, Tamako suddenly announced that she would be leaving tomorrow. She wanted to start studying to become a real doctor. Both Tamahiko and Yuzuki were surprised by this decision. Tamako explained that she would move to live with an uncle who ran a hospital, because she wanted to study and gain hands-on experience. Yuzuki didn't want to be separated from her sister, But she still gently asked for the real reason. Why Tamako had made this decision. Even Tamako herself was surprised by it. Until now, she had always lived only for herself, never caring about others. However, when she saw Yuzuki seriously ill, Tamako's body seemed to move on its own. She tried everything she could to help Yuzuki, the very girl she used to find annoying. Even though the Shima family strictly forbade working under others or doing servant-like tasks, Tamako was still determined to become a doctor. She wanted to be someone who could save people in pain. Before leaving, Tamahiko came to thank his sister for everything she had done. Though she blushed with embarrassment, Tamako still tried to keep a cold expression, pretending to dislike her brother as usual. That night, Yuzuki suggested that the three of them sleep together, as a way to make a beautiful memory. Thinking back, among the Shima siblings, Tamahiko and Tamako were the most lonely and withdrawn. Tamahiko still clearly remembered how it felt to be held and comforted by Yuzuki when he was in despair. This time, he wanted to do the same for his little sister. He gently hugged Tamako. At first, Tamako was a bit shy, but she didn't resist at all. In that moment, he thought, if only we had understood each other earlier, maybe we could have been the closest of siblings. Tamako was someone he had always found hard to approach, but in truth, she was the little sister he cherished the most in the family. After holding her softly for a while, Tamahiko suddenly snapped out of it, realizing his action might have been too sudden. But Tamako remained silent, then turned her face away. She didn't scold Tamahiko. She just blushed, as if she were trying to hide something. The next morning, Yuzuki woke up early to prepare a special lunchbox to see Tamako off. Tamako came to the table, planning to tease them with a few words like she always did. But this time, when Tamahiko gently patted her head, Tamako suddenly blushed and muttered, "Next time, if you want to pat my head, look me in the face and do it. Don't sneak up on me in the middle of the night like that." So, she had known everything all along. On the train ride back to Tokyo, Tamako sat quietly. When she accidentally opened her backpack, she discovered a book about medicine. It was a gift her brother had secretly left for her. Tamako held the book, looked at the cover for a long time, and smiled. Those two dear siblings of hers might have been the ones who changed her life. Meanwhile, back at home, Yuzuki was getting ready to go to the village market. As soon as she stepped into the market, she heard the excited chatter of the villagers. Tamahiko suddenly recalled the rumors the doctor had mentioned the other day, and a wave of worry surged in his heart. He quickly ran after Yuzuki. Tamahiko offered to carry the bags for her. He feared that the gossip around them might make Yuzuki feel sad. But he was wrong. Yuzuki turned to him, took his hand, and said with a bright smile, "I'm really happy to go shopping with you like this." They shopped together, chatting and laughing along the way. At that moment, Tamahiko felt like he was reliving his childhood, the only time he had ever known true joy. Back then, his only friends were books. Just seeing a bookstall made his eyes light up. He told Yuzuki that ever since he was a child, books were his only friends. Not even on his birthday did Tamahiko ever receive a book from his father. On all the days that should have been happy, he could only sit alone in the library. Suddenly, a strange girl appeared. She began secretly following Tamahiko and Yuzuki from behind, and the look in her eyes was rather sinister. That evening, the dinner table was filled with special dishes. It turned out Yuzuki had found out it was Tamahiko's birthday. She had quietly asked Tamako in advance to prepare everything. Not only did she cook, Yuzuki also gave him a small but meaningful gift, a flower-pressed bookmark handmade by her. Yuzuki said it reminded her of Tamahiko, because he was quiet and simple, but warm. For the first time in his life, someone had given him a birthday gift. Tamahiko couldn't hide his emotions. His hands began to tremble, and tears fell before he even realized. In that moment, he hugged Yuzuki tightly. Tamahiko thanked Yuzuki for saving him from the darkness of his past. He whispered, "I promise I'll cherish you forever." And so, the two looked deeply into each other's eyes. At that moment, time itself seemed to stop. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the romantic atmosphere. Tamahiko quickly left the room to check what happened. Yuzuki let out a sigh of relief, probably because the moment had been so intense. Tamahiko felt the same way. Neither of them had fully processed the sweetness they had just shared. When he reached the living room, Tamako discovered someone had broken his favorite candy jar. Standing in front of him was the same strange girl who had been spying on them earlier. Not only had she broken something, she was also holding a book from Tamako's personal treasure trove. One of the forbidden books he had always kept hidden. With a mischievous yet seductive look, she said she wanted to help Tamako practice the things written in the book. A sweet scent emanated from her body, making Tamako feel a little dizzy. But before he could make sense of anything, she jumped out the window and disappeared. Yuzuki came looking for him afterward to ask what had happened, but Tamako chose to keep it a secret. He was afraid the truth about the magical book would be exposed. As he searched himself to make sure everything was still there, Tamako suddenly realized that the bookmark and his wallet had been stolen by her, but he didn't care about the money. What shocked Tamako was the bookmark. It was the first gift he had ever received in his life, something he couldn't bear to lose. Without hesitation, he jumped on his bike and rode off to find it. Meanwhile, Yuzuki noticed a strange woman's perfume lingering in the room. She, too, felt confused and unsettled. That mysterious girl's name was Rio. She had just made it back to her rundown home. Tamako quietly hid near the door, eavesdropping on the conversation inside. It turned out Rio had been ordered to steal by her own father. She only meant to take enough money to feed her younger siblings, who, like her, had been abandoned, but the man didn't care at all. He even snatched the little money from her and went off to gamble. When Rio tried to take it back, he beat her and hurled insults at her right in front of the children. Watching this scene, Tamako quietly turned and walked away. When he got home, Yuzuki had already prepared a brand new candy jar for him. But Tamako couldn't bring himself to feel happy, because the gift that mattered most to him, the flower-pressed bookmark, was gone. Something inside him felt like it had shattered. The next morning, still restless and sleepless, Tamako turned down Yuzuki's invitation to visit the shrine. But it didn't take long before he suddenly stood up again. Tamako was determined to get that precious gift back no matter what. He went to Ryo's house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. Going around to the backyard, Tamako accidentally saw Rio was taking a bath, of course. The outcome was exactly what anyone would expect. Rio screamed, "You peeped on a girl bathing? That's 100 yen. Tamako flusteredly tried to explain himself. But Rio snapped back, "You already took your wallet back. What more do you want?" At first, Rio thought he was just a useless rich boy, locked up in his room all the time. She never expected him to come all the way here just for a pressed flower bookmark. Just then, one of Rio's little siblings ran out, asking her to help with homework. But Rio was terrible at math, so she shoved the teaching job onto Tamako instead. In exchange, she promised to return the bookmark and his wallet. Tamako reluctantly agreed. After a while of tutoring, he started to warm up to the kids. They were cheerful, energetic, and even called him teacher. It made Tamako blush slightly. Eventually, Rio found out that the bookmark was a gift from Yuzuki. Seeing how much Tamako treasured it, she didn't say anything more. As Tamako was about to leave, the children waved and said goodbye to their teacher, stirring up an indescribable feeling inside him. But then, the drunken father suddenly returned. Tamako quickly hid in the backyard. And once again, he left empty-handed. That night, Yuzuki gently asked how he was doing. But Tamako could only avoid the topic. He felt guilty, because he had lost the precious gift she gave him. The next morning, his eyes were dark from lack of sleep. Tamako was determined to tell Yuzuki everything. But just then, he heard a commotion outside the door. Tamako ran out and saw Rio being harassed by a group of men. They were calling her a bot servant girl. Tamako immediately rushed over, shielding her with his body. He said seriously, "Yuzuki is an incredible girl. Someone like me doesn't even deserve her." But the moment of peace didn't last long. But Yuzuki sensed something was wrong. She noticed a familiar scent of perfume lingering in the room. It was the same scent from last night, the girl named Rio. Suddenly, the memories came rushing back. Last night, Rio had shamelessly claimed to be Tamako's lover. She even lied that the two of them had spent an intimate night together, and that they had been lying naked beside each other. Worst of all, she claimed, "Tamako gave me this flower-pressed bookmark. The very same bookmark Yuzuki had handcrafted with love." Her heart felt like it was being crushed. Even though Tamako had quickly explained everything, insisting none of it was true, Yuzuki only gave a faint, bitter smile and said she believed him. But her trembling hands told a different story. In front of him, Yuzuki tore the bookmark into pieces, then coldly brushed his hand away and walked off without a word. Having stirred enough trouble, Ryo left Tamahiko's house. But strangely, she felt a tightness in her chest. How could a poor girl like Yuzuki live so happily with the one she loved? Why did that make Ryo feel so bitter inside? Yet the next morning, to everyone's surprise, Yuzuki acted like nothing had happened. She smiled as she did the housework, cooked, and took care of Tamako, just like always. That was what truly scared Tamako. Not because Yuzuki was angry, but because she was too good at hiding her pain. Just then, Tamako received a phone call from his little sister, Tamako. She cheerfully told him about her new school, where she had already made lots of friends. The real reason she called was to wish him a happy birthday. She had meant to call the day before, but got too busy and forgot. A poor excuse to cover up her awkwardness. But even with just a few words, Tamako could tell something was off. Tamako didn't hide it anymore. He told her everything, about the stolen gift, and how Yuzuki had smiled while crying inside. Tamako let out a small sigh. "You're such an idiot," she said. "Do you know what kind of flower was pressed inside that bookmark? It symbolizes eternal love. Yuzuki must have wanted to tell you, 'I will love you forever.'" And now, Tamako finally understood. He had unknowingly broken the heart of the girl who loved him most. So he made up his mind to do whatever it took to restore not just the bookmark, but also her broken heart. As night fell, Yuzuki walked into the room and saw Tamako hunched over, carefully piecing the flower bookmark back together. He looked up and gently said, "I finally understand the true meaning of your gift, and I had to fix it," Tamako said with quiet resolve. Yuzuki sat down beside him and gently shared her feelings. She told him she wasn't angry about the gift itself, but because he had hidden everything from her. Yuzuki had sensed something was wrong from the very beginning. She had been anxious and uneasy. And what made her even more nervous was seeing Tamako getting close to a beautiful girl like Ryo. Embarrassed, she started hitting Tamako with her fists. But the more she hit him, the happier he felt, because at least, it meant she still cared. Finally, the flower bookmark was pieced back together. "Good as new," Yuzuki explained further. She once said the Kikyu flower reminded her of Tamako, because it also symbolizes sincerity. One crisp autumn morning, Yuzuki was gently wiping Tamako's face with a warm cloth. The scene was sweet and peaceful. Until suddenly, a bunch of kids jumped out from the bushes. It was Ryo's siblings. They had grown fond of Tamako, and wanted their teacher to give them more lessons. Before Tamako could answer, even more kids appeared out of nowhere. Yuzuki might have been overwhelmed, but she just smiled softly and said, "The more, the merrier." Tamako rolled up his sleeves and began teaching. With his calm voice and simple explanations, even the toughest math problems became easy to understand. He never raised his voice, always gentle with the children. One of them called him "Sensei," which made him blush. And the whole bunch burst out laughing. From a distance, Yuzuki stood watching her husband, her eyes sparkling. Just then, an unexpected guest appeared. It was Ryo. She came by to cook for the kids, and casually pulled Yuzuki down to the kitchen to help. Ever since the moment she saw Yuzuki tear the bookmark to shreds, Ryo realized this girl wasn't someone to mess with. Now, it felt like Yuzuki was silently saying, "If anyone dares take my husband, go ahead and try." After that, Ryo admitted she was sorry. She even joked that maybe the three of them could get along like the first wife and the mistress. Which, of course, made Yuzuki pout again. Ryo may have a sharp tongue, but no one could deny her dedication to her younger siblings. The next morning, Tamako saw Yuzuki struggling to clean the house. He quickly offered to help, but he got so exhausted that he dozed off, nearly falling onto a kettle of hot water. Thankfully, Yuzuki caught him just in time. She gently let him rest his head on her shoulder, and he fell asleep in peace. That night, Tamako suddenly woke up. He heard a soft, clear voice singing from the porch. When he stepped outside, he found Yuzuki sitting alone, quietly humming in the cold night air. Dressed in a light, delicate robe, Tamako hurried to wrap a coat around her, worried that Yuzuki might catch a cold. She looked up and smiled softly. "Today's my birthday," she whispered. "I just turned 15. That meant, from now on, she was legally old enough to be his wife. She had grown up without warmth, unloved and overlooked by her family. But now, by Tamahiko's side, she felt more complete than ever." Tamako pulled her into a tight embrace. With the only arm he had left, he now held the most precious girl in his life. And Tamako himself had changed completely. He no longer wanted to hide from the world. He wanted to chase happiness. To build a life, not run from it. He'd even started thinking seriously about going back to school. That's why he decided to write to his father. He wanted one more chance. If he could study hard, Tamako believed he could find a job that suited him, something he could be proud of. And someday, he swore, he would be the one to bring happiness to Yuzuki. They couldn't get married just yet. But Yuzuki was already overjoyed. Because to her, just being with him every day, that alone was enough. It was that very moment that Tamako couldn't hold back his emotions. He leaned in and gently placed a kiss on her lips. Unexpectedly, her lips were so soft. Luckily, the New Year's bell began to ring, instantly dispelling the awkward atmosphere between them. On a beautiful morning, Ryo's younger brother came to Tamako's house to say goodbye, because he was about to start working at a large store. At that moment, he tried to act strong, but he couldn't hide his sadness. Late at night, Ryo suddenly ran to Tamako's house. It turned out her younger brother had gone missing. The three of them immediately split up to search for him. Although still young, Ryotaro had always been his sister's emotional support during hard times. If anything happened to him, Ryo would lose the will to live. Finally, they found Ryotaro sleeping in a storage shed. He burst into tears, saying he didn't want to go work, but he thought he would never be able to come home again, and that he wouldn't get to see his sister and siblings anymore. Hearing this, Tamako gently comforted him. He told Ryotaro that ever since he was a child, Tamako had met many people who worked away from home. They all had holidays to return to their hometowns. Some even brought their entire families to visit Tokyo. He imagined the day he could take his whole family on trips everywhere. And Ryotaro began to change his way of thinking. Just then, Ryo arrived in time. She immediately hugged her younger brother, and the two of them collapsed to the ground in emotion. At first, she didn't want to let Ryotaro go, but this time, he truly wanted to work. Ryotaro hoped that one day, he could take his sister to many places. On the day of farewell, Yuzuki made a bag of candies for Ryotaro to eat on the way. He promised his sister that one day, he would take everyone on trips everywhere. Ryotaro had never been spoiled by their father since he was young. So when he received sincere care from Tamako, he felt incredibly happy. And so, the emotional farewell came to an end. In the meantime, time and again, Tamako sent letters to his father, expressing his wish to return to school, but he never received a reply. On the other hand, Yuzuki continued to exchange letters with her friends regularly. One day, a letter arrived for Tamako. It turned out to be from his uncle, who was running a hospital. In the letter, he said Tamako had been studying hard, and that she dreamed of becoming a doctor. Tamako had also told him everything about Tamako. The uncle expressed his intention to support Tamako's education in his father's place. Tamako immediately called to express his thanks. Then he threw himself into studying day and night. While he was reviewing his lessons, Ryo suddenly came to his house. It turned out she had heard that Tamako was going back to school. So Ryo wanted to help with the cooking as a way to show her gratitude. One day, Yuzuki and the children were extremely excited when they heard that the famous singer Katori was coming to perform in their area. The children begged Tamako to go with them, because they thought Yuzuki would be much happier if he came too. With her cute appearance and sweet voice, Katori captivated everyone. Then, she even sang a song in Icelandic. The kids were curious about the meaning of the foreign song, so they asked Tamako. He explained that it was a song praising eternal love. After many months of studying and preparing for exams, Tamako was finally able to go to school. Everyone was surprised by how tall he was. And it wasn't just Tamako. The class also welcomed another new student. His name was Hikaru, and he was the twin brother of the singer Katori. Unlike Hikaru, who was warmly welcomed by everyone, Tamako was ignored. Because of the reputation of his family, people still found it hard to accept the change. But since Tamako only had one functional arm, changing clothes was very difficult for him. So on the very first day of school, he arrived late and caused the whole class to be punished by the PE teacher with a run. During lunch, Tamako sat alone in silence. Even though Yuzuki's lunch was delicious, tears kept falling from his eyes. Today's class was art, with the theme, "Draw the person you love the most." Hikaru wanted to sit next to Tamako and work on the assignment together. He tried to hold it in, but ended up laughing when he saw Tamako's drawing of Yuzuki. The drawing reminded him of his grandfather. While the two of them kept bickering like that, they ended up getting punished by the teacher. The two had to sit and sketch portraits of each other. Hikaru came to Tamako's house to finish the assignment, and was warmly welcomed by Yuzuki. Hikaru tried to start conversations so Tamako would talk more. When Yuzuki asked how school was going, Tamako lied and said that everyone at school was kind to him. Hearing that, Yuzuki felt relieved, because she thought her husband had finally made some friends. After finishing their drawings, Hikaru revealed that he had overheard their entire conversation earlier. Tamako felt guilty and intended to tell Yuzuki the truth. But Hikaru advised him, instead of explaining, turn those words into reality. During the meal, when Hikaru called him a friend, Tamako was deeply moved. The next day, Hikaru came over again. This time, he even brought Katori with him, which shocked Yuzuki so much that she froze in place. As soon as she met Yuzuki, Katori eagerly asked to be taught about love. It turned out she was working with a magazine for young girls, and had received many questions related to romance. That's why Katori planned to write a song to encourage youthful love. However, she had no experience in that area. Luckily, thanks to Hikaru's introduction, she met a couple with a very sweet relationship, Yuzuki and Tamako. Katori wanted to use music to dispel sadness, and she wished to bring smiles to everyone's faces. For some reason, Hikaru didn't seem very interested in his sister's music. It seemed like every move they made was closely observed by Katori. Just as Katori began exploring the melody for her song, the kids showed up. They were completely stunned to see Katori, and forgot all about studying, becoming excited about learning to sing instead. Even Yuzuki and Ryo joined in. The next day, when going to school, Tamako noticed that a classmate had forgotten their pencil at home. Thanks to Hikaru's encouragement, he mustered up the courage, and Tamako lent the student his own pencil. After that, Hikaru even brought out a grown-up magazine that Tamako had just bought. Thanks to that, the class started to open up more, and they began talking to Tamako more often. However, strangely enough, up until now, it had only been Katori visiting Tamako's house, while Hikaru, on the other hand, stayed away. He seemed to be intentionally avoiding his sister. At home, Yuzuki shared her past experiences with Tamako, and her feelings toward his gentle sincerity. Yuzuki's heartfelt words became a source of inspiration for Katori. But a surprising truth was revealed. In the past, it was actually Hikaru who loved music even more than Katori. Curious, Yuzuki told Tamako about it. She felt this might be connected to why Hikaru was avoiding Katori. The next day, Tamako asked Hikaru directly about it. It turned out that Hikaru had been the one who first pursued music, and Katori used to look up to him greatly. But one day, he developed a serious illness, which made it impossible for Hikaru to sing anymore. So Hikaru passed his beloved instrument down to his sister. Katori was also very upset, so she once pressured her brother to return to music after he recovered. However, after 7 years in the hospital, Hikaru felt that there was now a great distance between them. Because of that, he gave up on his dream of music. Tamako, sensing that Hikaru might feel a little jealous of Katori, shared his own story. Tamako spoke about how Yuzuki saved him, and he encouraged Hikaru in return. This reminded Hikaru of the promise he once made to his sister. The next day, villagers flocked to hear Katori perform. But what surprised everyone was that Hikaru asked to perform a song with his sister. Katori couldn't hide her astonishment, because it was a gentle song that the two siblings used to hum together when they were little. After the performance ended, the two of them finally rediscovered their old smiles. Katori also officially debuted her song about love, which was inspired by the relationship between Yuzuki and Tamako. It was a deeply emotional song that left a lasting impression on listeners' hearts. On the way home, Yuzuki asked Tamako to teach her how to ride a bicycle. She wanted them to enjoy going on rides together in the future. However, Tamako made a vow: from now until forever, he would always be the man who could take her anywhere. The husband and wife would always be together forever. Tamako was on summer break, and he took the opportunity to write a letter to his uncle. Friends and the neighborhood children often came over to visit, filling the house with cheerful energy. Meanwhile, Yuzuki was reading a letter from Midori, who was her close friend. Just by glancing at Yuzuki's expression, Tamako could already sense that something surprising had happened. Midori was pregnant and about to get married. It turned out she had gotten ahead of herself before the wedding. Midori's fiancé was a journalist working at a newspaper, and they had been dating since the beginning of the year. Yuzuki and Midori had been close since their first year of school, so she was genuinely happy for her friend. However, Midori was moving far away to live with her husband's family, making it hard for them to see each other again. Yuzuki wanted to meet Midori one last time while she was still in Tokyo. Without hesitation, Tamako encouraged Yuzuki to visit her friend, because finding a good friend is precious and shouldn't be missed. However, Yuzuki was worried about Tamako's meals and daily needs. But since he had once lived alone, Tamako assured her he could manage just fine. He took her to the village shrine of the fertility god. While she was praying for her friend, Yuzuki also secretly wished that one day, when she had a child, her husband would bring her here again. Tamako also got a charm, a safe delivery amulet, to give to Midori. On the day of departure, Yuzuki wore a very cute hakama. However, she still worried that it didn't suit her. Tamako quickly reassured her, saying, "Not at all. You look absolutely adorable." Yuzuki also shared that she had asked Ryo to come over and help Tamako with the cooking for a few days. Even though Ryo often bullied him, Yuzuki didn't dislike her at all. She once had an older sister, but her sister passed away when Yuzuki was still in her mother's womb. So when she saw Ryo taking care of the children, Yuzuki was reminded of her own sister. Just before the train departed, Yuzuki tightly held Tamako's hand, clearly reluctant to part. Suddenly, she shyly asked for a kiss. Tamako was about to go for it, but he froze in surprise when he realized they were standing in the middle of the road. Yuzuki felt terribly embarrassed, but Tamako gently patted her head and promised, "When you come back, I'll kiss you as many times as you want." That line made Yuzuki blush, and Tamako was stunned too, realizing he had just blurted out something quite bold. When Yuzuki arrived in Tokyo, she reunited with Midori. The two of them hugged each other tightly, tears flowing from the emotions. Afterwards, they went to a cafe to chat. Midori shared that, because she got pregnant before getting married, she had been scolded harshly by her family. But her husband knelt before her parents and relatives, vowing that he would make Midori happy. Thanks to that, everyone felt more at ease. Yuzuki also told Midori how much Tamako cherished her, and she showed her the good luck charm he had given her. After hearing everything, Midori also felt relieved, knowing that her friend had such a good husband. Midori brought Yuzuki home to rest. Her husband was still out working at the time. The two stood together admiring the scenery, softly humming a tune, reminiscing about the old days. Yuzuki even cooked a delicious dinner for her friend. As night fell, Midori asked Yuzuki about her marriage. Yuzuki shared that although she and Tamako weren't officially married yet, he had promised to marry her properly and have lots of children together. Midori was truly happy to hear that from her friend. She even joked that if Tamako turned out to be a bad guy, she'd drag Yuzuki to come live with her instead. But seeing how happy Yuzuki was now, gave Midori peace of mind. The next morning, the two of them went for one last walk together. They reminisced about their school days, and the times they had shared their dreams with each other. The dream of having a good husband and a happy family. Midori now had no regrets. She felt completely at ease and ready to start her new life as a wife. Before the train arrived, the two of them spent the morning walking around and having fun. Meanwhile, back home, Tamako tried to act normal on the outside, but deep inside, he was anxious and restless. It was the first time he had ever longed so much for someone to come back. And then, a massive earthquake struck without warning. Tamako immediately rushed down into the town. Before his eyes was a scene of total devastation. Homes had collapsed. People were trapped under rubble. Though it was just a small village, the damage was beyond imagination. If it was this bad here, then Tokyo, densely packed with people, must have suffered far worse. Tamako returned home, sat down in a corner and buried his face in his hands. Overwhelmed with worry for Yuzuki. One dark, terrifying thought after another swirled through his mind. He blamed himself for letting her go to Tokyo. But then, he heard a cat meowing from Yuzuki's room. Tamako quickly rushed over to check. Thankfully, the cat was safe and unharmed. By chance, he discovered a letter Yuzuki had left behind. It was a birthday message for him, along with a hand-knitted scarf and a pair of wool gloves she had made for him herself. Even though his right hand was paralyzed, she had also made a matching set for herself, hoping that when winter came, they could walk together through the cold streets, hand in hand. Just thinking about that, Tamako couldn't stay still any longer. He made up his mind, he had to go find Yuzuki. Before leaving, he left a note stuck to the door. In case she came back, she would know that he was out looking for her. Ryo insisted on going with him, as she wanted to find her younger brother, Ryotaro, who was also working in Tokyo at the time. The children stayed behind to help the villagers. Tamako told them, "If you see anyone who lost their home, bring them to stay at my house." The journey from the village to Tokyo would take nearly 2 days on foot. Even so, Ryo never complained. That night, they rested at a small shrine. With only one working hand, Tamako still managed to make a few rice balls to eat along the way. When they finally arrived, Tokyo had turned into a living hell. The city was nearly completely destroyed. Tokyo Station was the only place still standing, so many people had gathered there to seek refuge. Tamako shouted Yuzuki's name, again and again, in the midst of the frantic crowd. But he was too exhausted, he eventually collapsed. When he woke up, his uncle was sitting beside him. Relief teams from all over the country had arrived in Tokyo. His uncle told him to rest, but Tamako refused. He got up and continued his desperate search for Yuzuki. His uncle was shocked by how much his once indifferent nephew had changed. Even Tamako was different now. They both wished Tamako good luck and hoped he would reunite with his future wife soon. Tamako and Tamako split up to look for her. He even posted missing person notices at a height Yuzuki would naturally look, hoping that she might see one. But the more they searched, the more hopeless it became. The sight of corpses scattered everywhere was heartbreaking, and Tamako almost lost all strength to go on. Thankfully, Tamako was there to encourage him. She cried a lot, but she refused to let go of her brother's hand. As night fell, they saw a suspicious-looking girl standing on a bridge. Fearing she might jump, they rushed toward her, but it turned out, she was simply praying. They saw the charm in his hand, and Tamako realized it belonged to Midori. He immediately asked about Yuzuki. Midori choked up and said, "After the fire broke out, the crowd pushed us apart. When I woke up, I was at the medical station, but Yuzuki was nowhere to be found." At that moment, Midori apologized, because she was the one who had invited Yuzuki to Tokyo. But Tamako didn't blame her. Instead, he asked about the baby she was carrying. He asked Tamako to stay and take care of Midori, while he would continue searching for Yuzuki. He turned over every body in the rubble, and it was a sleepless night. He remembered the rice Yuzuki used to cook, as tears quietly streamed down his face. Suddenly, he ran into Katori and Hikaru, who were singing and handing out food around Tokyo to lift people's spirits. They gave him a rice ball and comforting words. The two of them wanted to give him strength. Around that time, Ryo had found her little brother. The villagers had also taken shelter safely at Tamako's house. Tamako was still the only one out searching for his loved one. Just then, a little boy snatched away the rice he had been saving. But the boy's little sister had fallen, so he came back to apologize and returned the rice. Tamako wasn't angry at all. Instead, he shared the rice with both of the children. They said they were traveling with a young woman who wasn't a relative, but someone who had saved the little girl from falling into a river. When Tamako asked the girl's name, it turned out to be Yuzuki, so he rushed inside immediately. At that moment, she was unconscious, but Yuzuki's breathing was steady, and her body was still warm. He then directed the two children to find Kotori and updated her on the situation. Then he tied Yuzuki's hand to his own and ran as fast as he could to the medical station. In her unconsciousness, Yuzuki dreamed she was lost in a snowstorm. She only wished to return to Tamahiko's side. She remembered the first time they met, when her father called him the family's burden. But to Yuzuki, he was the first person to treat her with warmth and kindness. When the fire broke out, she got separated from Midori. So Yuzuki wandered alone through the ruins and met the two children. After that, she fainted. In the depths of her mind, she had only one wish: to see Tamahiko one last time. Finally, she woke up. In front of her was the person she had longed for as she neared death. He was crying and calling her name. Yuzuki hugged him tightly, and neither of them could hold back their emotions. So they kissed each other in the middle of the crowd while she kept saying, "I love you." After that, everyone was overjoyed to know that everyone was safe. She asked Tamahiko to feed her porridge like a child. At that moment, Tamahiko's father and older sister appeared. He came to force his younger brother to stop providing relief, and returned to take care of his injured eldest son. But the uncle refused, so the father left, while Tamahiko felt happy knowing his father was still alive. 1 month later, the whole group returned to the village. They discovered a hot spring nearby that only the villagers knew about. The girls were all excited, especially when they noticed the bump in Yuzuki's belly. Realizing it was a sign that she was pregnant, Kotori imagined Yuzuki in all kinds of outfits, which drove Tamahiko crazy with delight. Everyone laughed and played happily. Tamahiko and the kids relaxed in the hot spring. At this moment, Ryo confessed that she had once sold her body for money, but Ryotaro had stopped her in time. Still, she admitted she was deeply jealous of Yuzuki's happiness. Even so, Yuzuki still cherished her deeply. Meanwhile, Tamako was openly jealous, because she saw how close Ryo was with her sister-in-law. Tamako also wanted to have conversations like that. When Tamahiko arrived home, he saw the children running out to wish him a happy birthday. Even though it was late, everyone had prepared a grand feast together. After that, the two of them went to the Inari shrine once more. Yuzuki confessed her love to him again. She knew she probably shouldn't, but Yuzuki still wanted to hold Tamahiko's hand and kiss him many times, because she truly cherished the love she had in this life. Today's video comes to an end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support Oni-chan in making more fun videos. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Love you all always.